sign for 911.
Send the police.
What's the problem?
The chimp killed my friend. Oh, please. He ripped her face off.
He ripped her face off?
Please, he killed her.
Travis the Chimp was like a son to Sandra and Jerome. He was sold away from his mother at 3 days old and moved into suburbia. Travis was able to do chores, bathe himself, drive a car, and do much more than any other chimpanzee. At some point, he was even in the spotlight as an animal actor. But everything changed once the family fell apart. Travis was left with Sandra all alone, and she lost control. He brutally murdered her employee and friend, Charla Nash. Travis the Chimp ripped up this woman until her hands were gone and her face was destroyed. So let's get into it. So today we're talking about Travis the Chimp. He's a chimpanzee who's also an animal actor. He only lived until the age of 13 and his last day on Earth was horrific.
On the 16th of February 2009 at around 3:40 p.m, an adult male chimpanzee named Travis, who had been kept as a beloved and pampered pet for many years, went berserk, mauling and severely injuring a 55-year-old woman.
Before we get into what happened with Travis, I want to talk a little bit about his upbringing because he was born on October 21st, 1995. He was an animal actor, like I said, and he did commercials and he was even on the Maury Show. But here is a clip of a commercial that Travis did.
Okay, Earl, let's call it a night. Thank you. You're welcome.
I wish I could show you guys a clip of Travis on the Maury Show, but I couldn't find it anywhere. Anyways, Travis was born on October 21st, 1995. He was born in Missouri, and his mother's name is Susie. So Susie belonged to a breeder, and Travis was born, and then he was eventually sold to a couple named Sandra and Jerome. They purchased Travis for $50,000 from this breeder when he was only 3 days old.
Travis was born at a chimpanzee sanctuary in Missouri on October 21st, 1995. He was soon adopted by Sandra and Jerome Herold, who named him after their favorite singer, Travis Tritt.
So clearly Travis was a pet to Sandra and Jerome. I mean, they even named him after their favorite artists. But unfortunately, Travis's real mother, Susie, didn't live long after he was adopted. It turns out that Susie, Travis's chimpanzee mother, escaped shortly after he was sold, and she was killed because she escaped the sanctuary, which is really unfortunate because I'm sure this chimpanzee, Susie, was trying to find their child who was only 3 days old. I do want to give you guys a disclaimer that I do not put any blame onto Travis or these exotic animals because personally, I don't believe they should be pets. I mean, I don't even feel comfortable going to zoos. But Travis was really socialized to humans because he was brought up to Connecticut and then just raised in suburbia. Some of the neighbors actually talk about times where they were wrestling with Travis and that he listened very well to the owners, better than their own nephews.
Neighbor Tony Macari even used to wrestle with Travis on a regular basis. He noted that the animal was always extremely careful when playing and knew when to stop. Indeed, according to Tony Macari, Travis listened to instructions better than his own nephews.
So Travis was pretty much a child to Sandra and Jerome. He dressed himself, he did chores, he ate meals with the family, used a computer, knew all the times that the local ice cream trucks made their rounds. I mean, he was also a big fan of baseball. I mean, this chimp could go and use keys to open doors, could go and water plants, feed hay to the horses. This chimp was extremely smart. But there were some unfortunate events that happened in this family that seemed to have shaken up Travis's behavior. I mean, granted, I don't believe a chimpanzee should be acting like a child living in this house. Like, it's a human. But Sandra and Jerome, they had one child, and unfortunately that child died in the year 2000 in a car accident. Then in 2004, Jerome died of cancer. So there was a lot of loss in this family, and Travis was very much a part of this family. So this grew Sandra and Travis's bond with each other, but at the same time kind of broke up the family and changed the dynamics. But there was an event in 2003 before Jerome had passed away. At this point, he was sick with cancer, but he hadn't died yet. In October 2003, Travis escaped their car and ran loose in the city in the streets. Again, this isn't Travis's fault because he's an exotic animal in this situation, and someone actually threw trash at him, like probably I guess to like they saw a chimpanzee and was like, what? I'm in Connecticut. Like, what is going on here? And no excuse to throw trash at him. But like, anyways, Travis was pissed and let himself out of the car to go and handle this situation.
In October 2003, for example, Travis was riding in the Heralds' car when he was hit by an object thrown by a passing pedestrian. The chimp let himself out of the car and chased the offending individual, who fled the scene. A sensible move when confronted with a 200-pound angry chimp.
As I've been doing research for this video, I've learned that once a chimp is pissed off, they are mad, and there's really no going back. So there's this whole scene going on outside, and the police are called, and they're doing everything in their power to just try to lure him back into the car. But then once he gets into the car again, he decides to let himself out.
The police were called, and a slapstick chase ensued wherein they would tempt Travis back into the car with cookies, ice cream, and macadamia nuts, only for Travis to immediately let himself out again once it had a snap. He chased officers playfully around the car and held up traffic for several hours. It was only once he became tired that he was eventually subdued with a tranquilizer dart.
So they had to go and tranquilize Travis just to calm him down. And this situation made news, headlines, and it eventually changed policy. This 2003 incident led to the passing of a Connecticut law prohibiting people from keeping primates weighing more than 50 pounds as pets. So that's pretty big because Travis is like 200 pounds. Sandra actually got a pass when it comes to Travis because Travis had already been there, and at this point the government didn't believe that Travis was threatening. So go ahead and keep your chimp, just nobody else can go and get one of their own. But that brings us to the tragic incident that went down on February 16th, 2009. At around 3:40 p.m., Travis attacked Sandra's friend named Carla Nash. This is a really horrific story, guys, so I want to give you guys a little bit of a trigger warning because Nash's injuries are extreme, and the incident itself is devastating, and it sounds like a horror film. So if you've got a weak stomach, or if you're worried of having nightmares at night involving chimpanzees, then maybe skip ahead.
On this particular day, Travis had taken Sandra's car keys and left the house. Sandra called Charla so that she could come over and help her tempt the chimp back inside. Charla, who was very familiar with the animal, took one of his favorite toys, a Tickle Me Elmo doll.
You guys heard correctly, because yes, this chimp Travis took the keys to the car and left. I mean, I have no idea how a chimpanzee, a 13-year-old chimpanzee, 200 pounds, is out here operating a vehicle, and I don't understand why the government allowed them to keep him, because he's clearly dangerous. And as you guys heard, Sandra called her friend Charla Nash to come over and to help her because this is out of control. Charla Nash has been around Travis a good amount. I mean, not as much as Sandra, and most of the time Travis was kept in his cage, but she came there and she knew that the Elmo doll was his favorite toy. He is a 13-year-old chimp, and she tried to lure him back using this toy, but this really upset Travis. And I guess like at this point, like Charla had changed her hair up, so maybe Travis didn't recognize her, but he decided to attack her.
Sandra did her best to save her friend. She hit Travis with a shovel and stabbed him with a butcher knife, an act which caused her great emotional distress.
Travis goes after Nash, and then Sandra steps in and she gets physical with Travis, like trying to stop him to save her friend. But of course, I mean, this is a very strong animal and it can just rip you apart so easily. So Sandra was hitting him with a shovel. She at one point stabbed him with a butcher knife in the back, and she was actually quoted saying, "For me to do something like that, put a knife in him, was like putting one in myself." I mean, keep in mind her child had died and her husband is gone. Travis was really the last thing in her life. This story is so scary, and it gets even scarier when you hear the 911 call. So Sandra was frantically calling 911 and telling them that her friend Nash is now dead, that this chimpanzee has killed him, and to bring a gun and to kill this chimp.
Down for 911.
Send the police.
What's the problem?
The chimp killed my friend. Oh, please. He ripped her face off.
He ripped her face off?
Please, he killed her, please.
Why are you saying that she's dead?
She's dead. He ripped her apart.
He ripped what apart? Her face?
Everything. Oh,
He ripped her apart?
listen, she's dead. She's dead.
Every time I hear that clip, I get chills all throughout my body because you can hear the horror in her voice and how scared she is. And then you hear Travis in the back, like, making chimp noises, and you're like, what is this? Like, what episode of Black Mirror? It wouldn't even be Black Mirror, but like low-key it's giving me that vibe. Travis's screams could be heard in the background as Sandra pleaded for police, but the operator believed this was a hoax until she started screaming, "He's eating her." Shortly after Sandra's call, EMT arrived and they were at the scene, but they couldn't proceed until police were there because they were not going to go and handle Travis on their own. So then police arrive and Travis is in disarray. He's in pain, he's confused, he's hurt, and he starts to go after the cruiser. He goes to one side of the window and smashes it in, and then heads over to the driver's side until police take care of him.
Travis ceased his attack as the first police car arrived on scene. Blood-drenched but calm, he approached the police cruiser and tried to open the door, then smashed one of the wing mirrors. He then walked around to the driver's side door and opened it, at which point the officer inside discharged several rounds from his handgun into Travis at close range.
These shots eventually killed Travis and he retreated to his cage, which I guess would be a safe space for him, and that's where he passed away. But this entire incident just sounds so graphic and scary, and honestly, even the police officer in that moment, like I'm surprised, like, I don't know, that the bullets even stopped Travis and that he didn't get hurt from this, because that sounds like an event that would give me PTSD. Clearly, Travis should have not been living in Connecticut in suburbia with Sandra, and it led to Carla Nash pretty much losing her life. In the days following the attack, Carla Nash required many hours of surgery by multiple surgeons. Travis had broken nearly all the bones in her face, torn away her eyelids, nose, jaw, lips, and most of her scalp. She's completely blind and removed one of her hands and most of the other.
They were so severe that the hospital staff who treated her received counselling after doing so. She had lost her hands, nose, eyes, lips, and mid-face bone structure, and received significant brain tissue injuries. Doctors reattached her jaw, but could not save her sight. She was left with scar tissue that barely resembled a human face.
This scene is extremely graphic, and listen to how one of these responding officers described what he saw.
As we were being led to where the patient was, I saw some fingers, there was some teeth, there was blood trails up to where the patient was laying down. We didn't really see the injury until we rolled her over. Her facial structure was completely gone.
It sounds horrific. I mean, that means Travis just like ripped off these fingers individually. And one of the nurses was even quoted saying that it looked like her hand went through like a meat machine. Like, it doesn't even look like an animal could do that.
When I saw her hands, I would never have imagined that an animal could have done that. They honestly look like they went through a meat grinder.
So at this point, we're just praying that Charla Nash makes it through, because these injuries are so serious, it doesn't even look like anyone could survive or live with what Travis has done. But there's more to this story, because Travis's head was taken to a state laboratory for rabies. The head did not have rabies. Travis did not have rabies, but he did have Xanax in his system. So I guess when animals pass away, like exotic animals like these, they are cremated. And before they went and cremated Travis, they did a bunch of tests. And this Xanax didn't really belong in his system. It actually turns out that a toxicology report confirmed that Sandra had given Travis Xanax-laced tea on the day of the attack, which could have increased his aggression. Xanax, even though it does, like, in my opinion, I thought it just slows you down and calms you down. It turns out it could, like, increase aggression in animals and create, like, hallucinogens. So they are confused, they're slowed down, they're disoriented, and maybe that contributed to Travis attacking Nash. Before her death, Sandra confirmed that she had given the chimp Xanax-laced tea early on the day of the attack in an attempt to calm him down. The medication can, however, occasionally cause paradoxical reactions in the short term. These include hallucinations, aggression, rage, and mania. So now let's get back to our friend Charla Nash, because now she's got to live with these injuries. So in November 2009, she appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show to discuss what happened and the procedure she had done to try to save her life.
This is a photograph of Charla Nash taken 2 years ago at a local county fair. A lifelong animal lover, in her younger years, Charla was a rodeo cowgirl. The rough and tumble cowboys affectionately nicknamed her Charlie. She also sometimes helped care for Sandra's pet chimpanzee, Travis. Charla had known Travis the chimp for 10 years, but says she always feared him.
So during this interview, Charla hadn't had any, like, well, she's had a ton of reconstructive surgery, but she hadn't had, like, the experimental surgery that we will discuss, but she needed money to do this, and Oprah was going to pay her to be on the show, and plus she needed to do some crowdsourced funding for her medical bills because she was pretty much screwed after this incident. But it also seemed like she was motivated to help push the message that these animals should not be kept as pets.
Tell me why you wanted to do the interview now.
Well, I'm getting stronger and healthier, and I'd like to put across to people's minds that these exotic animals are very dangerous, and they shouldn't be around. There's a place for them that it's not in residential areas, that's for sure.
One moment I found interesting in this interview is that Charla Nash also had another moment with Travis when he was younger, and it was something that Sandra didn't really take seriously. I guess Travis was running around the yard and jumped onto Nash's back and ripped out a huge chunk of her hair, which made Sandra laugh.
So you'd never seen him out of the cage?
Only 2 times when he was really little. One time, he was running around the yard and swinging off the trees in the house, and he jumped on my neck and he pulled a big hunk of hair out of my head. And I had tears in my eyes, and she was laughing, and I told her it hurt.
Honestly, it's not surprising to me to hear this story because exotic animals are dangerous. They belong in exotic places, like hence the name. And because this story was going viral at the time, people started to come forward and share their own experiences, because one woman claimed back in 1996 that Travis had bitten her hand and tried to pull her into a vehicle as she greeted him. She supposedly complained to the police about this, but there's really no record of it.
A woman who lived in the same area as the Heralds alleged that Travis bit her and tried to pull her into a car sometime in 1996. While this does seem like a more serious cause for concern, no record of the incident can be found, despite the woman noting that she reported it to the police.
So all of this is coming out about Travis, but there's really nothing we can do because he's already gone. The event happened in February, and then we saw Charla Nash go to Oprah in November, and then 15 months later, Sandra passes away. This would probably be the only person we could point at and blame for what's happened here, because clearly they weren't taking care of this chimpanzee correctly. Not that there's a correct way to take care of a chimpanzee when you live in suburbia, but they weren't taking care of Travis correctly because Travis was able to go and do this. But on May 24th, 2010, Sandra passed away due to an aneurysm at the age of 72. I mean, granted, she's lost everything in her life and she had a pending lawsuit because, you know, Charla was not going to let this go. So she probably had so much stress and depression and anxiety that she just could not handle it anymore.
Sandra Herold died a little more than a year after the incident, her health likely affected by the massive pending lawsuit against her and the stress of a terrible, violent attack against a close friend. She passed away after suffering an aortic aneurysm and was buried along with Travis's cremated remains.
So it seemed like Charla was intending on suing Sandra for what had happened to her, but Sandra wasn't really there for long and she was going through all of these surgeries. In May 2011, Nash actually went under a transplant surgery performed by a doctor at Harvard, and it actually turns out that this surgery was experimental. They were putting a donated face and hands on Nash, which sounds really like intense. Like it's like crazy that we can even do those things. And it sounds like the hand transplant was successful, but then she developed pneumonia. Oh, poor Nash, poor girl. Oh, I feel so bad for her. So she got these brand new hands and they had to remove them because they had infection and poor circulation. But Charla was able to get a new face, which is important. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I want to talk about this lawsuit because someone was going to get sued for this. So they filed a $50 million lawsuit against Sandra, and it looks like their assets were valued at around $10 million. So a judge froze those assets to hold on to them for Charla. Ultimately, Charla received $4 million in November 2012, but this took some time. I mean, Sandra passed away, and at one point they were fighting this whole lawsuit because they claimed that the Xanax really had no part in why Travis attacked Charla, and that's something that Charla's team was trying to point out, that the chimpanzee should have never had Xanax in its system. But Charla wasn't done there because she wanted more, I guess, because, I mean, granted, she's lost her entire life. She has no ability to work. So what else is she going to do? She attempted to sue the state of Connecticut in 2013, but her claim was denied. They did end up appealing this decision because they claimed that these officials knew that this chimpanzee was dangerous, yet they allowed it to live in Connecticut freely. It does seem like the money that Charla has gotten in these settlements have gone to good use because she did get a face transplant that worked out, and it does seem like she's living the best life she could under these circumstances and that she's somewhat independent.
Fiercely independent, Charla now lives on her own.
I go this way.
I know you have somebody who comes in Monday through Friday to help out and aid, but Saturday and Sunday you're on your own. Why was that so important in terms of your recovery?
I've always been independent, and as far as the health, I have just what I need.
She even gets out and about using a transport service for the disabled.
So Charla's doing okay. I mean, granted, what she went through, you can never erase that, but it is inspiring to see that she's like living a life and like moving around and speaking, and like she survived something that is like my worst nightmare now. This is my brand new worst nightmare. But a lot of things changed because of Charla's story. I mean, there have been a bunch of new policies passed where the Department of Environmental Protection stepped in. A representative named Earl also passed the Captive Primate Safety Act, and a bunch of different agencies stepped in to put in policy into place to stop this from ever happening again, because honestly it's pretty selfish to go and try to like raise a 200-pound chimpanzee on your own. Like, don't you believe that this creature deserves better, deserves freedom in the jungle to live how they please, not to be like, I don't know, a filler child or a filler family member. And just to close the loop on this story, Frank, the police officer who shot and killed Travis, actually had to go and get therapy for depression and anxiety after this incident. And he actually led legislation in 2010 to cover the payments, the compensation that he had to, go and spend to get help for PTSD. Like, he made it so that there's policy now so that if another police officer gets into an incident with an exotic animal, they can go and seek help for treatment without having to, go broke, which I think is so important. And it's interesting how every single person was so affected by this incident. They all kind of went off and it changed their life in some way. And I really go back to selfishness, because I do believe that Sandra and Jerome were selfish for having this animal because they wanted to have one. Like, there was really no need. And at some point, this chimpanzee was like a child actor, like an animal actor. So it just seemed like kind of a sad situation. And I really think that we should pay attention to people who have exotic animals and make sure that they're doing everything that they have to do, that they're legally required to do, to protect this animal and to protect others. Because Sandra laughed the first time when the hair was being pulled out of the head, but then, the next time when her face was being ripped apart, it was horrific. And I just think that everything should have been taken more seriously from the start, and that animals belong in their homes, not in zoos, not in suburbia, in their homes, in the jungle, in the wild, wherever they shall be. But this was a weird story, right? I saw a TikTok. I was like, you know what? I want to make a video about this, and I did it. So if you guys have any other video ideas for me, or you have any comments or whatever, just let me know. Did you like this video? Was it weird? Like, I just thought the story was incredible and really scary. So comment below, and I'll see you guys in a new video soon. Bye, guys.